so much for joining us tonight. An infamous East Texas murderer is leading the charge in a legal fight over the lack of air conditioning in Texas prisons. Several prisoners' rights groups are asking to join a federal lawsuit filed last year by Bernie Tiede. He's the Carthage mortician serving out a life sentence for killing a wealthy widow back in 1996. His efforts come after he said he was impacted last year by extreme heat.
April 2016, Bernie Tiede is re-sentenced to life in prison for murdering Marjorie Nugent and storing her body in a freezer for 9 months. A crime so unusual, it became a Hollywood movie.
He was the nicest guy in town.
He was about the most popular man in Carthage.
This week, the director of the 2011 film joined prisoners' rights advocates in a virtual news conference about the lack of AC in Texas prisons.
Today, I'm here on behalf of Bernie Tiede and thousands of others who are enduring inhumane conditions within the Texas prison system.
Linklater claims Bernie, who is now 65 years old, suffered what appears to have been a stroke last year because of extreme heat and was later moved to an air-conditioned cell.
Without our quick legal action and attorney Jody Cole, Bernie very likely would have died. He is now almost completely blind in one eye and continues to have facial paralysis. He's not okay, but he survived last summer with the court's intervention.
But Linklater and other advocates say not all prisoners are as lucky. With only about 30% of the state's 100 prison units being fully air-conditioned, they're fighting for change.
The only public space in the state of Texas that is not air-conditioned, that does not have climate control, is the Texas prison system.
And while the Texas Department of Criminal Justice does not comment on pending litigation, they do have this web page showing ongoing AC projects and also details on protocols that include fans, cooling towers, and respite areas. A statement on the site says over the last several years, the agency has worked to increase the number of cool beds available. TDCJ is dedicated to continuing to add air-conditioned beds in our facilities.
It is time to ensure that our correctional facilities adhere to humane standards that respect the dignity of every individual.
Now, the state of Texas has not reported a heat-related death in Texas prisons since 2012, but a study back in 2022 by the Texas Tribune found that 14 prison deaths a year were in fact associated with the heat.